we've got to start this week's show with a discussion on a player who we had on as a guest on the show last week, and she's attracted plenty of headlines over the weekend. That player is Noa-Lynn van Leuven. She backs up her first Challenge Tour title with a first Women's Series title at the weekend. There's been a lot of talk on social media off the back of it. Noa-Lynn, she's been playing in the women's events in both the PDC and the WDF for some time now, with the support as well from those organisations, and she's enjoying more success now, but sadly with it comes a lot more noise as well. How do you see this playing out over the coming months?
I really don't know if we can fully guess how it's going to play out. As long as she continues to have the support of the PDC, of the WDF, of the Dutch board, then I think the status quo will remain the status quo. And I hope she continues to have the support. We had Barry Hearn on the show in one of our first couple of seasons, and he said, at the time, he didn't see a need for a women's series because you don't need to be a man to play darts at the highest level. And plenty of people have proven that. So as opposed to some other sports where there is unquestionably a biological advantage that rises going through puberty as a man prior to transitioning, that transitioning won't completely get rid of. I don't see darts as one of those sports, and I don't see what advantage Noa-Lynn van Leuven has over the competition based on the fact that she had been born male. I don't see what it is, and I don't see what the issue is there. In other sports, it is complex, and there are good and bad arguments on both sides in other sports. But I don't see it in darts. I do not see why this should be an issue. I understand that people are frustrated, and obviously, we saw the comments from Aline de Graaf and Anke Zylstra pulling out of the Dutch team. We saw Dita Hedman make comments again about Noa-Lynn van Leuven. It's sad, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but their opinion shouldn't override Noa-Lynn's right to compete. I hope, and I believe, but I haven't talked to everyone, but I hope and believe that those are minority viewpoints. And I hope, and again, I haven't talked to everyone, but I believe that the PDC, the WDF, and the Dutch board will continue to back and support Noa-Lynn over the coming months. Because as long as they do, then there's really not anything anyone who has a different point of view can do other than make the decision whether they're going to compete themselves or not. And if they make the choice not to compete, well, then they're hurting only themselves. There are plenty of really, really good female players now. Noa-Lynn is just one of a growing handful or two handfuls of players who on any given day can win a title. And we'll talk more about that on the next question. We saw a weekend where Bo Greaves had possibly her worst weekend or second worst weekend in the women's series, still averaged 83. But if you look at just the number of players who are now averaging into the mid-70s, it's so much higher than it was. You go back to the first season, just 4 players averaged over 74. In the first weekend, and yes, it's only one weekend this year, 10 did, including 3 over 80, and Noa-Lynn van Leuven being one of those 3. Kirsty Vinakainen, one of the people I shouted out last week, is actually 4th in average, is ahead of Mikuru Suzuki, who won a title. There are so many players playing at a high level that it should be something that we're all talking about and celebrating from this weekend. Instead, we're talking about Noa-Lynn van Leuven, and not for her winning a title, not for her becoming the first person in the space of a week to win titles against both men and women, but rather talking about whether she should be allowed to compete. This isn't football. This isn't weightlifting. This isn't a sport where going through puberty as a man is going to give you some sort of ingrained advantage. If there is an advantage, I don't know what it is. And maybe I shouldn't be speaking that, because I don't, I'm not a scientist, but I'm not a biologist, but I don't see what advantage would come from going through puberty as a man in darts compared to other sports. And hopefully that view wins out. But let's get back to talking about the darts. Let's get talking about how brilliant Noa-Lynn van Leuven was. Sure, not as brilliant as she was en route to the title in the Challenge Tour last week, but pretty darn close. 101 average against Fallon Sherrick, over 90 against Bo Greaves coming through that in 8 legs, over 90 against Anka Zylstra. Haters are going to hate. Another just phenomenal performance and another title for one of the top players in the world.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. And the Noa-Lynn van Leuven story is one that you could say it's been bubbling under the surface for a while now, going back to when she first started playing on the Women's Series a little under 2 years ago now. She transitioned from a man to a woman before that, and darts had been a passion of hers. She took a break from playing darts for 3 or 4 years, started playing again sometime after she'd went into that program to identify as a woman. And with every success that Noa-Lynn van Leuven is having, the noise, it appears to be getting louder and louder from those that don't agree with her being allowed to compete in the women's events. And one of the things that most disappoints me about this whole situation, if you like, is that a week before Noa won that Women's Series title, she went to the Challenge Tour, she won a title on debut, played some incredible darts on the way to winning that title. And the Challenge Tour, as we know, it's open to anyone, any gender. It's not exclusive to male or female players. So regardless of your opinion, there's no reason to suggest that Noa couldn't play in those events or wouldn't be welcomed by some. Yet the PDC in the end, they've had to turn off the comments on the social media posts mentioning Noa's Challenge Tour title because some people still feel the need to comment with digs at her negative comments. So coming into this past weekend, the Women's Series returned, and the form that Noa had shown on the Challenge Tour, I personally felt, and I'm sure many others felt, that another title could be on the cards. And so it proved to be, winning that second event, beating most people's top 2 ladies in the game right now, Bo Greaves and Fallon Sherrick, on the way to doing it. And as we saw, the PDC, other media outlets as well, when they reported the win, they turned the comments off straight away. And that didn't stop people coming on social media, having their say and questioning why Noa's allowed to play in the Women's Series events. And the reason she is pretty simple. She follows the rules that have been set out by the DRA. They're the rules that the PDC follow, the DRA's rules. And the DRA, where do they get their rules from? They're following the guidance from the IOC, that's the International Olympic Committee. And Matt Porter, the PDC chief exec, he said sometime last year that Noa-Lynn van Leuven more than complies with darts' transgender policy. So I don't see how the PDC stance is going to change on this in the immediate future. This story, one that's clearly not going to go away anytime soon, and I can't see an outcome where everyone's going to be happy. You could please the players, that the side that want only biological women in women's events, ban Noa and all the transgender players. But what kind of message is that going to send out when before you've been saying that darts is inclusive to everyone and we welcome transgender players if they comply with the regulations? Well, we're going to go back on that now. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. And it's a very delicate subject, one that does require a lot of thought. And I think it's great that Noa-Lynn van Leuven is allowed to be what she wants to be. She identifies as a woman. She's gone through the relevant steps to be able to play darts in the women's events, the gender that she recognises herself as. And I don't see how in darts, like you mentioned there, being a male gives you that big advantage compared to female players. And if that was the case, then surely Noa-Lynn van Leuven, the first time she walked into a venue to play the Women's Series, she'd have won everything. But that's not been the case. This has been a story over the last few years where Noa's level has increased year on year, and she's now hit the heights that have seen her win these titles. And she's obviously got a talent. She's worked hard on her game to get to the level that she's at now. And I think with everything that's gone on behind the scenes, she deserves a lot more credit than she's getting, because if that was me and you're trying to play darts at the highest level you can and you've got all that noise going on in the background, I certainly wouldn't be able to produce that kind of game. I wouldn't be able to anyway. But I don't think this is a story that we've heard the end of, and I'm sure it's something that we're going to continue to be talking about as well.